Happy Saturday, YouTube. And it's been a very frigid start to the weekend. A little more story time about the weather for you folks, just for the fun of it. As I complete my fuel stop here and get back on the road. Well, slowly. Bit of traffic ahead of me. Come on, son, you gotta make it. Go on now. Alright, there we go. Today would be great. Anyway, just love when folks pull out a bit too far and can't make the swing because they're afraid they're gonna hit something. I mean, happens to all of us at some point, but it annoys whoever's stuck behind you. Anyway, I just motor on past this guy through a gap here because it's like he's fixing to park and I need to roll, so off we go. Anyway, cold, wintry Friday. And we had the storms that rolled through the Midwest on Thursday, and that was super fun. Yesterday, though, in Iowa, fairly interestingly enough, there was, I guess, a last gasp of that winter system that came through, and it was dropping some freezing rain and some snow at some different points depending on where you were at. So the roads got a bit sketchy. Fortunately, no one, I only saw what I think was really one wreck, and it was an SUV that got loose and was on the side of the road. Either he hit a semi or a semi hit him or whatever, but there seemed to only be two vehicles involved. It wasn't like it was a significant impact. You know, the vehicles weren't destroyed. There wasn't debris everywhere, so probably one of those things where it was a bad pass execution, or one vehicle or the other was going a bit too fast for the conditions and got swirly, and then things just kind of went haywire from there. I'm not too sure about it, but everyone seemed like they were okay, so, you know, that's a positive takeaway from that, I guess you could say. It took me a while to crawl my way across Iowa to get to the magical mecca that is the Iowa 80 truck stop at Walcott at exit 284 on Interstate 80, because that is probably the one truck stop, you know, in the entire region, well, one of maybe two or three that I know of at least, where it's a massive facility with guaranteed, you know, food, fuel, and whatever else, essentially 24/7, where you can also get parking just about any time of the day or night. I have never seen Walcott 100% full. So it is my go-to safe haven when I am either at, you know, certain times of day or my hours are running low. Walcott, guaranteed place more often than not. Anyway, Canada has finally, the Canadian government more accurately, has started to put its money where its mouth was, and has begun forcefully breaking up the protest in Ottawa, which is extremely unfortunate for our Canadian brethren and sistren up there who have been protesting the Canadian pandemic mandates. Still, 22 days of successful, peaceful protest is nothing to sneeze at, and you should all be proud of what you accomplished. You did get some things rolled back. A lot of provinces of Canada seemed to see the writing on the wall and started scaling things back a little bit, as well as 4 provinces elected to opt out of Prime Minister Trudeau's use of the Emergency Power Act, which I think was very politically astute move. But the crackdown in Ottawa, in a lot of ways you kind of saw it coming, but I don't understand Canadian politics because the parliamentary system versus the American congressional system is something I am just not up on, not versed in it. I don't understand the intricacies or the differences. I just know that by comparison to the U.S. system, where the election of representatives and senators happens at the state level as well as the local level, the president's election happens at the national level, whereas the election of the prime minister happens I'm aware. Now, I could be very, very wrong. Because, again, I'm just going off half-cocked here like a typical American to illustrate either what I do know or just how badly I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. As far as I'm given to understand, in the parliamentary system, similar to how it is in Great Britain, the Prime Minister is chosen by the winning coalition or the coalition government in power or the party in power. They will elect one of their own as Prime Minister, and that Prime Minister is then tasked with forming the government and proceeding on with business. So, and as far as I've been given to understand, again, parliamentary elections happen in England once every 5 years. Whereas in the U.S., they happen every 2 years, no matter what. Every 2 years we have the congressional elections, no matter what, the off-season elections as they're called, as you know. And then we have every 4 years the presidential election. This is 2022. This is going to be an off-season election. This is going to be a congressional election. It's going to be a bloody season, of course, as we expect. And by this time in 2023, it's going to be a vastly different face on politics in the U.S., at least in theory, when in a lot of ways it's just more of the same nonsense, just with different names and faces spewing it. Anyway, so there really is no routine electoral check on governmental power in Canada. So there is no election coming up that Prime Minister Trudeau has to worry about, apparently, at least as far as I'm given. Again, I don't know, so I'm just spewing what I do know. So his ability to more or less rule, quote unquote, by fiat is far and away, as I'm aware of it, easier than it is for the American president to do in the States. We saw Trump issue tons of executive orders. We saw Obama issue some executive orders. We've seen Biden issue executive orders. But those orders can and have been challenged in many cases successfully at the federal, the appeals, and the Supreme Court levels. And in some cases, those orders were confirmed. In other cases, those orders were vacated. It all depended on the judge and at what level that court challenge took place, whether it was the federal courts, the appeals court, or the appellate court, or the Supreme Court. There appears to be, again, as far as I'm aware, there appears to be very few vehicles or avenues that the Canadian people have to change their government with the same frequency that the U.S. does, which for the Canadian people is very unfortunate. And I would go so far as to say that if that parliamentary system is as I've described it, and I'm not, factually incorrect, and I'm assuming I'm factually incorrect. So do not take what I'm saying with any kind of truth to it, because I do not know the political system or the governmental system of Great Britain or Canada at all. I just know that the parliamentary system is different from the congressional system in, tremendous otherwise oppose their election or re-election, as well as representatives and senators seeking to solidify their election chances and guaranteed re-election. So, are these welcoming committees going to be able to affect change in the American mandate setup? I don't know. Will they probably introduce legislation to vacate the emergency authorization acts, or bring them to an end or draw them to a close? Probably. But right now, the House is controlled by Democrats. The Senate is split between Democrats and Republicans, with Vice President Harris the tie-breaking vote. So nominally, the Senate is controlled by Democrats, except for the wild cards of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So the Senate's a little more up for grabs. The legislation has to pass both chambers of Congress in order to then go to President Biden's desk, and then he can either sign it or veto it, depending on, as far as I'm aware, whether or not the signed legislation achieved a veto-proof majority in both chambers. I think it has to exceed 2/3 of the Senate and 3/4 of the House in order for a presidential veto to be and just rendered null and void before it even gets to the president's desk. Okay, he's forced to sign it because Congress overwhelmingly passed this legislation. Now, that's as far as I know. I haven't taken a constitutional refresher course in a long time, so I'm just talking about what I remember vaguely, or what I've heard or read about over the last few years of wild political discourse. So the Freedom Convoy protests in the U.S. will not likely face the same level of governmental opposition as they did in Canada, because again, it is election year, and cracking down on truck drivers setting up bouncy houses in Washington, D.C. with SWAT teams will be very bad optics when we're just a few months shy of, 9 months, less than 9 months shy of election.